Welcome to Sitecore Standard Values Podcast. I am your host, Rick Bauer, Director of Customer Transformation at Sitecore. In this podcast, we continually seek to provide deeper insights into the value of Sitecore as a solution to business problems. With regular episodes from me in the US and from my counterpart Sultan in the Netherlands, we will alternate to bring you a variety of guests to share their global perspectives and experiences through a rich tapestry of discussion, opinion, and thought experiments. No pressure. My guest today is Mitch Talbot, Area Vice President at Horizontal Integrations and a Sitecore MVP. I have known Mitch. I think you and I have been in the industry about the same amount of time, or at least the Sitecore space. And I've had the pleasure of working with Mitch and sharing a beverage or two over the years. I have not yet had the opportunity to ride a road bike with Mitch because I will simply fall behind, but I am working on it. So, hi, Mitch. Welcome to Sitecore Standard Values. Tell me anything else I missed about yourself, please, and just let people know who you are.
Well, thanks, Rick, and thanks for hosting me today. I'm excited to be on the podcast and been a long-time listener, so first-time caller. I'm very excited.
Get that one out.
I'll start with a couple of clarifications. Clarification number one, it's no longer horizontal integration. It's horizontal digital is kind of how we go to market. And it's, I think our legacy in the Sitecore space, everybody still knows us as horizontal integration, but we did change our name a couple of years ago. And then the other clarification is, I don't know if you'd be falling behind me in a road bike, maybe 10 years ago, but these days, I'm firmly in the dad bod category and enjoying different exercises these days. So.
Fair enough. Okay. Yeah. Well, shame on me on the name. I just always thought maybe that was like a division of, but I stand corrected, and I will not edit that out. I will take my lumps and horizontal digital. But yes, I guess maybe that's just my age in the space showing. So,
well, I think for most of us that have been in and around Sitecore and the ecosystem for all these years,
yes.
Horizontal integration's just been such a household brand in the ecosystem,
right?
And I think we're trying to move into a different kind of our next generation of evolution there too. So
okay, so let my mistake be a correction for everybody to learn from that maybe didn't already know. So no, thank you for that. So let's dig into some questions. I know you're. As a VP, you're out in front of a lot of Sitecore customers across all sorts of industries. What are some of the trends? And because I know you're kind of like at a business level, right? You're not necessarily out sitting in code or anything like that. But what are some of the trends you're hearing and or seeing, if I may air quote, in the industry?
Yeah, no, I think we can all kind of relate to where the industry's kind of come. I think. If we look back in time to, where web CMSs and DXPs have kind of evolved to, and now we're in this kind of composable future, I think that's creating a lot of interesting opportunity in the market when you think about customers taking advantage of what we call productized business capabilities, or PBCs, and really empowering those within their organization. So I think the last year or two really kind of marks probably the most significant change we've seen in kind of the DXP CMS space. And I would argue it's probably been an industry that's been ripe for innovation and change. And so I think with that, we're seeing a lot of kind of what's that mean and what are customers out there in the world thinking about. And so I'm kind of seeing a few common trends emerge from this new world, if you will. I think one trend I'm seeing is kind of this notion of connected experiences. So customers are kind of wanting to deliver a similar brand experience, whether it's a sales channel, a service channel, a loyalty channel, an acquisition channel. The imperatives to deliver that experience or a cohesive experience for your customers, whatever channel they're coming into, is a significant imperative for a lot of the customers I'm talking to. So I think it's good to see customers are really starting to look omni-channel about their brand presence and those
Yes.
interactions and those micro moments. So that's been really interesting. And I don't know if you're kind of given your role, seeing similar things.
Indeed. And moving thinking from web channel to omni is a maturity step, not only in technology, but in thinking. It amazes me how much I still have to get people to think outside their website. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
And I think the second big kind of trend I'm seeing in the industry right now is activating data to deliver kind of those personalized experiences in the
Mhm.
moment. And so, if you kind of what do you mean by that? If you kind of step back a bit, a lot of organizations, I don't think organizations have a problem with understanding who their customers are, or have a problem with collecting data.
Mhm.
What we're
No.
seeing is we see a lot of customers have challenges orchestrating and activating on that data. And so I think we're in this unique wave right now too, where how do we centralize, unify, and then orchestrate those the data movement to really drive insights and those kind of personalized moments for those users. So I think even this the last couple of years here with Sitecore CDP product and the personalized product coming to the forefront, that's creating some really unique opportunities, not only for businesses to unify data, but also look at methods and tactics to enrich data across our organization with behavioral type data that's coming through.
Yeah.
So those are kind of the two big things I'm seeing. I'd say on the data side, the two biggest challenges we're seeing in the market right now is orchestration of that data and integration of data. Because as you know, a lot of these organizations have siloed technology throughout their ecosystem, and it's
Right.
how do we tap into legacy systems to grab the insights we need to really drive experiences. So, there are a couple of the things I'm seeing as kind of the leading trends in the market,
Yeah.
both from a composable DXP and what that can mean for customers, but then how do we smartly activate those PCBs for organizations?
And yeah, like the incoming data is not so much a problem anymore. It's now a glut of data. And how do I the word you use, and it's one of my favorites as far as comes to this whole thought process, is activating. How do you take that data, activate it, use it to start to drive conversion, use it to start to drive and improve a user journey? I think that it's daunting, but first, step one, let's get the technology in place, but then how do you start to strategize around that as well?
Right.
Yeah.
Totally.
Um, okay. So I've also had, the joy of working on projects with your broader strategic team. And what are some of the strategies you're seeing customers drive towards? Are there any trends?
Yeah, I'd say there's been a couple, and I'd say this is more broad across the market, but it seems to kind of continue back to a couple of things we're seeing is there's a lot of our customers describe their ambitions more broadly across the enterprise, and I think there's kind of two things that are kind of happening in the market right now in terms of how do people capitalize on those ambitions or actually reach those ambitions.
Right.
One thing I'm seeing is companies kind of shifting to whether it's a product kind of model, a center of excellence kind of model. I know those are both centers of excellence have been around for quite some time now, and product mindsets have been around for quite some time. But I think
Sure.
how you embed that into organizations and work across business has been kind of that last mile for a lot of organizations. So strategically, I think people are looking at how do we optimize our teams to deliver digital value back to the business and the users. Um, Linchpin of that, and I don't want to make this a data podcast, but a linchpin of that is really becoming more data driven in how customers are making decisions about not only where they're spending investments, but I think the other side of that is how are they investing in their teams internally to really capitalize on some of those opportunities. So data-driven mentality, I think, is one of the strategies a lot of our customers are really starting to deploy around. If we're going to test and learn or deliver personalization, how do we infuse a culture of test and learn and make that muscle memory, so that they can really scale those kind of insights across the organization? So I think that's one of the bigger strategies we see our organizations really taking. I think the other is modernization. So with composable DXPs being kind of all the hotness right now, we see a lot of organizations saying, how do we modernize this technology to make it meaningful for our users? And so it's not necessarily about modernization for modernization's sake. It's really about how do we take what we have in the legacy in these organizations and make it better? And so continuous improvement as a strategy seems to be picking up a lot of steam in industries that maybe historically haven't been very data driven, test and learn centric, or kind of this continuous improvement mindset. So we're seeing organizational strategies like that coming up, but I think it's all for the better of the users and their end customers, and that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and I want to dig into the composable in a second, and all things composable. I think by law we have to at this point. But you said something, basically you said something about the last mile, and I think about organizations and their teams and centers of excellence. And the thing that I've also run into that pertains to this a little bit is, getting to that center of excellence is one thing, and then there's just in life, there's turnover. There's people that come and go. And there's been several organizations that I've worked with that I've, back when I was doing more trained several times because people left, so it's not just the last mile. It's kind of like the next race. It's the getting people trained and then, having a system in place to keep that tribal knowledge available. I feel like like we look at technology and the strategy as the hard part. That last mile so often tends to be a people element, and just getting the some sort of uniformity and consistency over time to be able to excel. And okay, so that's I'm going to transition to composable because I think it plays a piece in that. But composable DXPs, I'll say they've been around long enough now to be maybe in that smoothing out in the hype cycle, if I can use that curve. Where are you currently seeing demand? Let's talk industry solution type. Let's even consider what I was just talking about with like people and how it can relate to those kind of Sitecore uses the Lego brick analogy. But can you speak a little bit to what you're seeing in demand and trends?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I don't know if there's a single thing that we're seeing like tons of demand for, but I think Sitecore, and I'll just talk about Sitecore since I know it a little bit.
Sure.
I think the fact that Sitecore's been one of the first to market with a SaaS-based CMS platform is significant. Significant in the sense where customers have been really excited about this day, because we think about a world where upgrades aren't going to be as expensive, not having to manage kind of the day-to-day operational elements of your application and your infrastructure, and really kind of focus a lot of those efforts in your investments into digital, into innovation, I think is critical. So we're seeing a lot of interest and demand around what's this mean? How do we get there? And if we're heavily invested today in maybe our XP footprint or our all-in-one solution, how do we get to this kind of new XM Cloud world? So XM Cloud is a pretty, as it's a pretty awesome platform. tons of innovation happening in it daily. I mean, we're seeing a lot of just new features being released on every week that are pretty impactful. We see a couple of things there. I think customers really looking for how do we get there? How do we get there smartly? Where we're capitalizing on some of the investments we've made, and it's not a significant, rip and replace kind of model. But I also feel like Content Hub and that part of the composable DXP is really where I'm seeing some untapped innovation. So there's still a big demand for managing content assets.
Yes.
Where I'm seeing this kind of composable DXP marketplace opening up opportunities is this concept around atomic content. So atomic content being, and we'll just take a campaign example. So we might have landing page content, email content, social content, all kind of bundled up into here's my campaign content. Well, imagine a world where an organization can create, publish, and syndicate that content seamlessly through one platform and have it permeate through all your channels. That's where we're seeing the industry starting to shape up and kind of head towards this direction. And I think a lot of the piece parts Sitecore has really developed as part of their composable strategy are going to empower that, because content operations, again, kind of getting back to that last mile of some of the challenges, not only organizationally and people change management, is there's mundane tasks that happen at each step of the content journey. So how do we automate some of those mundane things and ultimately make digital work harder for organizations? And so I see that's really where the industry is going. And I think Sitecore's solutions are going to really be kind of part of the center of that. I think industry-wise, we're also seeing B2B, B2B2C manufacturers really think differently about how they're interacting with their channels and customers. So not only, I think a lot of people see organizations that are more B2C centric, put a lot of money in that end user experience, but their wholesale or B2B relationships are kind of a second class experience.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing organizations in that kind of industry space really kind of shifting how they deliver experiences for those channels, because at the end of the day, it's going to be to E, be to, business to everyone.
Right.
So how do we create a parallel experience for everyone?
Yeah. And I'm a big fan of Content Hub. I have been for a long time. And, you start to add in that atomic content along with the management thereof. And that's wonderful. I was thinking when you're talking about, just the people factor with that, when you're managing the content lifecycle, you can also start to manage, you're looking at agencies and outside, and what you just brought up of, like the B2B or the other elements within, that's almost like like an agency. I mean, you're basically, you can start to build, have different groups all in the same tool and governed with specific rules on what you can and can't do. And that's, and then just to be able to push that out omni-channel. And, you brought up XM and Content Hub. And I think the one thing I've noticed as well is the thing that Composable as a whole does is kind of create a doorway in several places. You don't, and I respect the people that have been on like legacy on-premise or XP or, and they have an investment in an all-in-one solution. There's different doors you can open to start your journey to Composable, and then once you open that door in your time frame, and that's where, we've done these together, we can roadmap out and help figure out and help guide a roadmap that helps you figure out where you kind of start to come into that. But that absolutely, does it really, really creates opportunity, I think, to modernize.
Exactly.
Is there anything that excites you most about the approach that you've seen? I'll pick on. I mean, this is our podcast on Sitecore's DXP approach.
Yeah, the approach itself, I think, is sound. I think when I look at the leadership within Sitecore, they're really driving the products in the right direction. They're working with us partners and customers to really kind of bring everybody up with them.
Right.
I'm particularly, I've got a bit of a background in commerce, and so I'm super excited about Sitecore Commerce, Order Cloud, and kind of this B2E experience that I talk about. I mean, I've had the pleasure of working with Mark Johnson a bit.
Sure.
And this kind of notion of reach without compromise is significant in terms of you got a single platform that you can really service multiple customer types. And right now, I think that's a sweet spot in the industry. I look across the competitive set of different DXP providers out there, and there's a lot of organizations that still go to market with B2B is this type of a implementation, B2C is this type of an implementation, or in some cases separate platforms. And so I'm also seeing, most of the premier software organizations out there are all kind of racing to this kind of headless model. And so I think that's going to really kind of rise the tide for everyone. But I think, Sitecore's got a unique approach right now and a unique opportunity in the market to really kind of capitalize on this B2E experience that they can deliver that frankly not too many in the marketplace can right now. So
yeah, and that commerce piece, kind of one of the more recent, if not the, I mean, I would say it's the most recent large Lego brick, and so it's going to take a little training, a little time, but I'm excited to see momentum gain on that as well. I agree with you. Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, I'm going to throw you a little side curveball. Horizontal digital, and even in the past, I will not say the old name to not perpetuate the false brand. Horizontal digital throws some epic event-based parties. I have not been to nearly as many of those as you surely have. Do you have a favorite that you recall?
Oh boy.
Or a fond moment or memory.
I think the thing I really appreciate about Horizontal, and this isn't a commercial, but our founders have been very active in the community, and it's never competitive. Like our parties, anybody and everybody's welcome. Yep. And I think that just breeds such a unique experience. And so I often talk about it's the journey, not the destination. I would say our last symposium party was tremendous, ton of fun, cool experience.
Yeah.
But it's really in support of the community and our customers and Sitecore, and frankly, that's what it's all about. We all are crossing paths with each other, and it's how do we kind of raise the tides with everybody here, share knowledge, and have fun doing it.
Love it.
That's what it's all about. But yeah, no, the last symposium party was outstanding. A couple of early mornings, but that's the price of fun.
Yes, I was at the last one, and I agree that the vibe of community is there. So I definitely appreciate it. I usually tend to skip the after party, but that's probably just because I normally have to speak or do something next day. But anyway, or I'm just getting old. But all right, last question, and then we ask this of all our guests. Mitch, what is your standard value?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think for me, it's about being ethical in this business. Owning what you do well, owning what maybe not do well, and it's about relationships, and those relationships need to be built on mutual trust. And so, I think being highly ethical in kind of what you do and how you operate as a person every day is critical. A secondary value I often lean on is kind of never settle. I think push ourselves to go beyond the easy answer. And I think when we do that, we create greater possibilities of what's possible. So I see that happening a lot, not only in the company, but in the industry and the Sitecore community. This is a time of change. And I think a lot of the professionals in the Sitecore community are starting to reach beyond what are the possibilities of this new world we're in. And I think it's really going to breed a lot of cool innovation in the near future. So I'm really excited about that. And those are the two I typically lean on.
Good ones. Yeah, no. And we are, everyone's stretching right now, right? Where it's a lot of new stuff. I mean, especially in the days of, it's kind of almost becoming overwhelming now, but the whole Chat GPT and Dolly stuff, I've seen integrations into Content Hub where you can request an image, and if it's not in your library, you can have Dolly generate one for you. Well, there's ins and outs to all of that. We'll figure those things out in time, but it's fascinating to see that technology, and there are ethical things that we have to think about with that. So that's all that stuff that comes into play for sure.
Moderated AI, it's a thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. All right. Well, Mitch, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for joining on Sitecore Standard Values. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I certainly enjoyed having you and appreciate your insights. Look forward to seeing you on the road and hanging out with you. I do look forward to a ride at some point, and I would like you to accept my recently sent Strava request.
Perfect. And I appreciate it, Rick. I mean, we've known each other for years. This is meaningful for me getting my voice out, but I think, open invitation to the community out there. Feel free to connect, talk ideas. If you heard something here that you want to explore a little further, let's chat. It's an interesting time. So really appreciate your professionalism today, Rick, and your help pulling this together.
Words I don't hear often. Thank you, Mitch. I appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks.